So, okay, without further ado, our expert, Debora Rivera from Florida DOT.
Alrighty, thank you again for the invitation, and a special thanks to Mayor Gilbert. I appreciate the introduction, and hopefully I'll be able to live up to his expectations. I want to talk to you a little bit about our experience with relieving congestion and increasing choices for users along the I-95 corridor in South Florida, and we did that through express lanes. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Florida DOT. I think it's really important to talk a little bit about context, and I think you've heard a lot of the speakers talk about how some things don't work everywhere, but certainly we need to explore what will work and use the experiences that others can bring to the table. The Florida DOT is a decentralized agency. We are spending in the neighborhood of $7.3, $7.5 billion on average per year. We've got a lot of projects in our work program. So we're a pretty sizable organization and very highly privatized. We do very little of our own construction, very little of our own design and maintenance. Florida is also the third largest state in the union, and we have roughly just under 20 million residents in the state, and a lot of counties, 67 counties in all. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, other than to say that from my perspective, express lanes are facilities that are actively managed to increase efficiency, and that is people throughput. That's one of the things that you're trying to accomplish here, is being able to move people more reliably, more quickly, so that they can make better choices and use their day in a way that better meets their own needs. The other thing that's important to note here is that express lanes are usually just one component of a corridor-wide set of operational strategies. So you want to look at express lanes in combination with other improvement strategies, including transit, ride matching, traveler information, and so on. So our problem is, or was, very similar to the problem that I think you all have here in Connecticut, where we had large volumes on our corridor. We were expecting growth rates in the neighborhood of 45%, that's growth rates in population and in volume, between 2000 and 2030. You can see what our AADT was on the corridor, average annual daily traffic. Severe congestion, very unreliable time. So what I mean by unreliability is one day your trip might take 30 minutes, the next day it might take an hour and a half. So how do you plan for that? Do you have to leave your house every day an hour and a half early? So we had real problems with reliability. Unlike a lot of other facilities, our HOV lanes were performing extremely poorly. We did not have capacity available to sell. They were operating terribly poorly, so much so that we had our transit operator who was using that HOV facility to provide express bus service. The transit operator came to the agency and said, please do something. We have to fix the HOV lane. It's not working. And so we had that as a problem. And then, of course, it's a pretty significant commuter corridor. It basically connects downtown Fort Lauderdale to downtown Miami and along with their respective ports. Important corridor. So our solution, I think you heard a little bit about it before. Stephanie talked about the Urban Partnership Agreement. We did get a small amount of money from the USDOT. It was roughly $62.9 million that we received from USDOT, nearly 20 of which was invested in transit. And we used this to basically deliver the project very quickly. There had been prior studies done along the corridor, so we were able to use a very accelerated schedule to get the project in place. Important to note on the funding side that we did not need to sell bonds to finance this project. We used a design, build, finance, delivery technique, so the contractor actually held paper for us for a few years. And another thing that's not noted here on the slide, we also implemented a carpool registration program. Our occupancy went from 2+ in the HOV lane to 3+ in the express lanes, and we actually have a formal carpool registration program facilitated by a pre-existing and very successful commuter assistance program that we basically said, here, take care of this for us, and they did. They also provide a lot of customer service support as well. The purpose of the project was really simple. We wanted to manage and relieve congestion, and so we were looking at strategies to focus on that. Increased choices for users. We got a lot of information from our focus groups where people were interested in having more choices, and that's what this job is about. Of course, in doing that, we improved trip reliability and travel times, increasing operating speeds. We minimized the impact of the project and essentially built the improvements within the existing footprint, entirely within the existing right-of-way, but also within the existing footprint. So there's almost no pavement added. This was done through a lot of restriping. And obviously, we wanted an improvement that was going to be sustainable. So thus, the congestion pricing strategy was important as well. Project overview, we do use electronic toll collection. The days of toll booth are long ago, they're way past us. We are looking at all electronic toll collection. Certainly that is the strategy for this corridor. We had a pre-existing bus rapid transit service along the corridor, express bus service. That was enhanced by adding a bunch of preemption to some feeder bus service routes that were added. We spent about $20 million buying new, large articulated buses that are designed to attract premium transit users, and we also eliminated some of the pre-existing transfers that were occurring. We also implemented a number of complementary operating strategies. Again, I think it's really important to look at congestion relief from a very holistic perspective. There is no silver bullet. You've heard that from a few folks before. But looking at the corridor as a whole and tackling it, it's like eating the elephant. You do it one bite at a time. You don't eat the whole elephant in one bite. You take little pieces of it. And that's what we did through our operating strategies. We also did a lot of work in outreach and marketing. And so I only have a few points here on this slide, and frankly, I think these few points really do this part of the business a terrible disservice because we just did so much here. It's hard for me to convey that in one slide. The one thing I'll tell you, it's the last bullet there on the bottom, and that's more is more. You can't do enough. You can't do too much of this outreach. You always have new customers that are coming online, and you need to continue to reinforce the purpose, the need, the strategy, the approach, the use of the facility, and how this makes sense. And for a lot of these projects coming online, the proof is in the pudding, and our approach to implementing the project was somewhat unusual in that we built the first 7.5 miles, we built the northbound direction first and started collecting tolls there, and then we built southbound. So by the time southbound was under construction, people were dying to have the job finished because there were demonstrated benefits already on the ground with the northbound piece. So I think project context is really important. You need to know your community, and you also need to focus, and I think Mayor Gilbert said it really well, focus on purpose and need from the customer's perspective. What is it that you are looking to do for the customer? I'm an engineer, but I try really hard not to sound like one. Focus on the things that matter to people who are living their day. How are they getting to work? How are they picking their kids up from daycare? How are they getting to the Little League game? How are they not going to miss their plane when they have to go to the airport? Is the plumber going to be able to make an extra service call that day? So focus on the needs of people and businesses. We did do a lot of, as I said, focus groups to understand public perception. We focused a lot on things like choice, congestion, trip reliability, very important. People don't always know exactly how to articulate that. but trip reliability is really important. And for our community, transit was also a key selling point. We spent time developing a brand, and we did engage elected officials. In fact, they were engaged very early in the process, and they were pretty important champions. I would say that without their support, we may not have been awarded the Urban Partnership Agreement. I think those folks who got the UPAs all recognize the value of the support that they got from their delegations. We did a lot of large and small group presentations, including live call-in radio. That was fun. And then, you know, before, during, and after construction. The outreach doesn't end when the job goes into construction, and it doesn't end when the job's finished construction, because this is a quarter that you're actively managing, and so outreach needs to outlive the construction phases. Performance. I had a few folks who said, please make sure you talk about performance. These are the graphs. All this information is available in our annual reports. I'm not going to bore you too terribly with this, but I do want to kind of give it to you here in this format. The HOV lanes were operating at roughly 20 miles an hour prior to the job in 2008. This is in the southbound direction. That improved to 62 miles an hour in 2012. That's pretty significant. That's a tripling of operating speeds. So you triple operating speeds, your trip time is cut. General use lanes went from 15. This, I think, is even more compelling. I think it's obvious and it's intuitive that the users of the express lanes are going to see a benefit, but what's even more compelling, I think, is that the general use lanes, those folks who are using the lanes the way they always were, those lanes went from operating speeds of 15 miles an hour to almost 50. And you see similar improvements in the northbound direction. There are some differences because of directional splits, but generally what you see is that operating speeds doubled or tripled for the users of the general purpose lanes. The benefits did not accrue exclusively to those in the congestion price facility. We exceeded our targets both in terms of volume and in terms of revenue projection. But again, as I've said lots of times before, if I could do this without collecting quarters or dollars or pennies or whatever it is, we would. Our primary goal here was to address congestion, improve trip reliability, and offer users more choices. Those were the compelling arguments, and we stuck to that story. The benefits we've talked about a little bit already here. One of the important benefits is that it does defer the need for future highway capital improvements, which, as you guys know, can be extremely expensive. We also provided increases to transit premium transit use. We saw a more than doubling, almost tripling of our transit boardings from pre-95 Express to the current condition. So we have significantly more transit users, and most of the new users are premium users. They're people that do not have to use transit. They are actually getting out of their single occupant vehicle cars. And then finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about common misconceptions, because these are the kinds of things that frequently we have to deal with. The express lanes are about improving mobility and choice. They have been for us in Florida. We did not sell bonds to pay for the 95 Express, so revenue stream was really of secondary importance. What we needed to do was improve mobility and choice. So these facilities do not necessarily make money, nor should you necessarily expect them to. The other common misconception is that express lanes will work everywhere under every condition, and that's just, not the case. It does require severity and long durations of congestion in order to have people want to modify their behavior and for congestion pricing to have the effect that you want. And the other common misconception, which we were able to dispel rather quickly and effectively, I think, is that express lanes benefit only those using the congestion priced facility. We saw significant improvements to the general purpose lanes. I should note that a component of those improvements were in fact attributed to our ramp metering, which we implemented at about the same time as we implemented express lanes. However, about 90% of the improvements that we saw in the general purpose lanes were in fact related to the project overall and the congestion pricing. Ramp metering accounted for less than 10% of those improvements. And then the other misconception is that express lanes all by themselves can solve all your congestion problems. And the fact is that we believe in Florida that they really do need to be part of a much larger mobility plan for the corridor. And I think that's it. That's all I have.